All right, welcome back into another episode of Indie Today I am joined by Andrew Schur of Schur,
Hello,
the
hello.
band, out of New York City. Andrew, how we doing on this wonderful Tuesday evening?
It is a wonderful Tuesday evening. I've been doing well. Just worked on a bunch of music today and working on some cover art. Can't complain. Sort of the life I've always wanted. And within the last year, it's really come together. So just grateful to be doing it every day.
I love that. I love that. Well, how I found you is kind of an interesting story. My buddy who comes in and works out with me in the morning time, he goes, dude, you got to check this guy out. I heard him on this best music to ski to podcast or playlist. And he played me a couple. Yeah, I know you're on some ski playlist, and he played it for me. He's going skiing this weekend, and he's like, dude, you got to get him on. And I was like, all right, we'll throw it out there and see him. And here we are. So,
Love that, dude. Love that.
I mean, getting on those random playlists, like I guess, like, is it just do you make the music for people to ski to? I guess, like, is that your goal?
Well, that's actually interesting that it's skiing because I love skiing and I love a lot of outdoor sports stuff. And I also advertise the music. I could get into a bit of that probably later on because that's quite a long story. But I found out that advertising to people who do outdoor sports, so skiing, surfing, biking, works really well for my music. There just seemed to be a connect there. Maybe it's the outdoor, earthy Connecticut background that I come from that causes that. Maybe that's imbued in the music. For some reason, though, there's that connection. I definitely, to answer your question, do not make the music specifically to ski to. However, I make music that I would want to listen to, and a lot of those outdoorsy type things are what I love to do. So I guess maybe that's where it comes from.
Yeah, by kind of the proxy, you're into the outdoors, so therefore the outdoors flows through your tunes. I mean, I think that definitely makes sense. Well, one of the things that kind of jumped out at me when I was first kind of diving in was just your wordplay and like the lyricism and all of that. I mean, typically Pickpocket, that song kind of has a lot of like edges. It felt like there's kind of some edges to it. So like, how'd you, I guess, get into the lyricism and what makes you like kind of have that edge to it as on that song specifically, the lyrics?
Thank you, man. I'm glad that the lyrics are resonating with you. I grew up playing guitar and piano. I was always an instrumentalist, so I didn't really do lyrics. I started playing when I was young, piano at 5, guitar at 8, and I played in rock bands and always stuck to guitar. I knew at some point that I wanted to have my own thing going and knew that that would require me to learn how to sing and write lyrics. But I always felt stuck there just because I didn't have it growing up. It's sort of like learning a language. If you learn a language when you're 5 years old, you don't really have to think about it. And so with the guitar, that always kind of came. Lyrics was not the case. And then I had this experience where in college, I started writing my own music. And I also was doing the cover art for this comedy magazine. A little bit of a tangent, but it does relate. So bear with me here. And they asked me to write 1 or 2 pieces for them. And my friend and I, my roommate at the time, had been watching How I Met Your Mother. So we tried to write some How I Met Your Mother-esque stuff. I'm not really a comedy writer at all. Certainly wasn't a writer at that point. And I just remember reading it and thinking, wow, this just sounds like crass, borderline misogynistic. It's not at all what I was going for. There's so much layering and nuance in those shows. And for my first attempt, I just thought, this is pitiful. And that really inspired me to pay a lot of attention to the lyrics. I thought, okay, I'm not going to be a comedy writer, but I do want to be a musician, which means that anything I put out there, I got to make sure I am 100% certain it is what I'm trying to say. And so to this day, lyrics still take me probably the same amount of time as the rest of the song. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to get the meaning that I want in there. And with Pickpocket specifically, I like saying things in ways that I haven't necessarily heard. So the song is essentially a love song. I wrote it about loving someone, but you could just say, oh, I love you, this is great, and such, but it's not the most interesting lyrics. And I've heard a bunch of more generic ways to convey that emotion. I think what's the weirdest but most personal way I can do that? And that's where it comes from. So I'll write a line, to try to convey the emotion. And then I think, wait a second, how do I make this more unique? How do I make it so that I start at A and end at B? Start in a place that you wouldn't think has to do with that emotion, and then somehow get to that emotion. And I think one of the reasons I have that as my mentality is because a lot of the times in life, a thought or an event will trigger something that has nothing to do with that event. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it happens to everyone. You know, you have memories or emotions connected with something. I'm searching for those connections in my own life. It's a very therapeutic process, but definitely the most difficult one in terms of my music writing. Like I said, it takes me a ton of time, as much as the rest of the song.
That's interesting. I mean, like we've had a lot of folks on here, and I've heard the opposite of like, all right, well, like, you know, the song takes the longest period, and then we just start humming stuff, and then lyrics come, and I'm like, how does that work?
Crazy. Yeah.
What do you mean you're humming and it just comes to you? But I guess, you know, for you, you're getting in, and like, I kind of like that you know where you want to go, and then you just kind of make the you know, the adjustment for like, all right, how do we get here more uniquely? You know, which
exactly.
I totally love that. You mentioned, you know, kind of some of the therapeutic therapists. Like, I've actually often thought about who is the therapist for the therapist. And your first lyric in that song, like, I'm like this guy and I have the same kind of ideas. Like,
oh yeah,
you know, who's out there, you know, unloading the stuff that they're gathering from other people. But, you know, talk to me about what inspired you there. Is that kind of the same idea, or where did that come from?
Yeah, so with a lot of my lyric ideas, they come from random conversations, media that I've consumed in some way, thoughts that I've had, and I have just a running note on my phone where anytime I hear, think, or see something interesting, could be a line, could be an idea or an emotion I'm trying to capture, I'll just write it down. And there's one time I was hanging out with a friend of mine who is a therapist, and she was talking about how she sees the therapist. And I thought, wait a second, is this just a never-ending chain? You know, therapists have therapists have therapists. And then I was thinking, wait, maybe the end of that chain is art in some way, some release, some form of expression. Could be painting, or maybe watching a movie, or connecting to a song. And so then I thought maybe I'm the therapist for the therapist, or in my case, you know, people I idolize, my musical greats are my therapists. I listen to them, feel better about my life, helps contextualize it. And it was almost a arrogant thought to think maybe I'm that way for someone else. But I had around that time also received a really nice DM from someone talking about how my music had resonated with them. And I thought, I got to write this song. The stars aligned on that. I saw the note, therapist for your therapist ? In my phone, got that DM, and yeah, kind of came from there.
All right. I love that. Well, I mean, are we going to get a DM for, you know, random guy got put on a ski playlist, and now we're on a podcast? I mean, like,
yeah,
we're getting that. It's coming next.
I love it. It's wonderful how social media connects people like that. It's really, it feels very empowering to know that this stuff can happen just solo. You know, you get a DM and anything could happen.
Yeah, certainly. We've definitely grown a lot from that game. And, you know, again, it's sometimes you're falling on deaf ears, but then you meet them in person. It's funny. I met somebody on Friday who, like, I DM'd a bunch of times, and I'm like, hey man, we've talked before. I know you.
That's
awesome.
Like,
oh, really? He's like, yeah, man. Like, he's like, oh, well, I live down the street. I was like, let's get something together. So, you know, it's funny how it kind of comes together. You know, kind of get back to your music. Sonder, I mean, another one of the lyrics that I just love. I'm like, you took mushrooms on the L train, you know, took psilocybin on the L train. I'm like, I couldn't think of somewhere where I'd want to take mushrooms less than on any type of public transit anywhere else. So, like, please tell me that's not from personal experience. Please tell me that that's just a thought you've had. But
that's a true story.
No.
First time I took shrooms, actually, I went to school in New York City, and one of my buddies said, you know, we should take shrooms. He had taken them before, and I thought, all right. And so we took some, and thought, okay, I'll have a mission for this, right? Plan it out. I want to go to MoMA, because I had assignment from a Spanish class I was taking where I had to do some research from a Spanish or Spanish-speaking painter and see that painting in person. And there are a bunch of museums in the city, thankfully. And so I could go and do that. And I thought, this will be my event for the day. It'd be cool to go to a museum, see some in New York. and being very inexperienced on shrooms, obviously, never taken them before. How are you going to get to Momo? I'm not going to pay for a taxi. I ain't got it like that. So we'll go on the subway. And that was a wild experience. I had taken the subway countless times before that, but just being in that mental space and songs about homelessness, seeing homelessness on shrooms on the subway was a tricky thing, because I feel like in many major cities, particularly in New York, you almost have crippling empathy with all the homelessness when you first arrive. And then the more you live here, the more it becomes commonplace. You know, if you see a building every day, you almost stop remembering what color it is or what it looks like. It's just always there. And then if you take shrooms and it alters your headspace, you have this completely different perspective on it. And I remember just being on the train and then walking through the city and thinking, this is absurd, the breadth of human experience that happens within feet of each other. Since then, I feel like I've always had a challenge living in the city. I grew up in the woods in Connecticut, and so I'm definitely a nature boy, hence the whole outdoor stuff we were talking about before. But the city is also incredible. It's got its own culture and rhythm, and there's just everything and everyone you want and don't want all in the same place. There's just like every shade of anything is here, which is an amazing thing to have. But you also have the most abject poverty. Yeah. And it's really hard to rationalize that. And then to also think a lot of these people just lived in the city beforehand. How does homelessness start? That was something I really didn't understand. And that there's also probably, going back to our conversation, how to find weird ways to get into that. I was thinking about homeless people in love. You know, that's definitely happened. At some point, they felt love or had crushes when they were growing up or something. And then to see that then snowball into their current situation was a really tough thought. It's actually the hardest song that I've had to write. Most of my stuff, as you're probably familiar, isn't that deep or like socially political. I don't know. But I just felt like this was something I had to talk about, because I don't really have an answer to it. I don't really have a statement about it. It's just this feeling that I wanted to get out to make people aware of, so that perhaps there's a better connection there, a better understanding, so that people remember that this is happening, that it's not just it doesn't have to just be a part of the city.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, you get in and like, I think when I've been a visitor and I felt that, like, I've been like, man, like there's stuff going on here. Even, I mean, downtown Atlanta, same thing. I mean, like you have it in every major metro. And then you think, like, I've often had the same thoughts, like, all right, how'd they get here? And like, what, where did this all start? And then, so it's hard to kind of rationalize. I mean, coming from, obviously, lucky or, different fortunate situation of like, man, like, how do I can't identify, because I don't know, in my head, I'm like, all right, if I lost my job today, what would I do? And I have, plan A, B, C, or D, but that's because I've had the time and had the thought to, been able to think about it. But like, it's a difficult thing to tackle for sure. So, we'll kind of get on, a little bit more some of your newer, music as you've, kind of come out here in 2025. And, I'd love to know, like, No Season Chill, No Season, like, is it a part of the, part of something that's coming up, another EP, or is it just something that you wanted to put out there, on its own to, kind of, get it out? Like, what kind of inspired you to release that song?
Yeah, well, No Season came about because the artist I collabed on it with, Swum, lives in Brooklyn, about 40 minutes from me. And I had never done any collabs before. I hadn't had many people reach out about it, but I started to gain some notoriety last year, and I guess word got around to him, and he hit me up and said he'd love to do a song together. And he comes from a lo-fi background, and I thought that would be an interesting challenge for me personally to work with someone else, something I'd never done on a song before, but also to see what kind of song we could put together having these two different backgrounds. And we started working on it, I think, November, December of last year. And it initially was just going to be kind of like a one-off, put this out, see how it goes. But I really enjoyed the process of working with him. I think it was similar on his side as well. And we decided, hopefully this year, to put another few songs together. It seemed to be well received, and I thought that the resulting vibe from our two backgrounds worked quite well and actually fell in line with the kind of music that I'm working on. And also, you learn a lot from it. Like I said, I hadn't worked with anyone before this, and it was just really cool to get the inside look on how he makes music, what his story was. The music world, quick side note here, but there's no right way, there's no program, there's no internships or anything. You're just kind of out here flinging paint on a canvas and seeing what happens. So anytime you can check in with someone who's either a little further up the ladder, has been doing this for longer, is so helpful. And he certainly was that. I mean, he's been doing it for 10 years or something, much longer than I have. And he had a lot of good lessons and good tips for how to navigate it. So that was great. Yeah, great guy to work with.
Yeah, I mean, like for you, I mean, as a kind of a solo project, I'm sure that like you've been in bands before. It's a little bit different writing in a band where you have multiple ears to something, and like you can kind of bounce things off of people. It's just you, so it's like kind of the getting into somebody else's process and combining out. That's kind of a cool thing to do, and like it's like I liken it to like it's like all right, you have secrets there, he's got secrets. You guys now you've collaborated, and you're you're going to be able to make some magics.
Yeah, and on that note, it's nice to find people who aren't cagey about their method. And I don't think the magic's going to come from what mixing I'm doing or things like that. It's going to come from inside. That's not something that you can really steal from someone, in my opinion. And so when people like Swum are very open about how they make music, what their process is, it's really helpful. It's really helpful. And it's also a sign of, I don't know, mutual respect, trustworthiness, in my opinion, just a good foundation, because there's no competition there. I don't love the competitive side of music, which fortunately I haven't really felt too much. Comes now and then, but when people are so open and willing to talk about everything in their music life, it's like having, I don't know, a paid mentor. You can't find that kind of knowledge on YouTube always, so it's cool.
Yeah. And if someone is kind of putting that knowledge out there, it's like, I don't know, like you putting this out there on purpose. Like, you kind of don't get it may not be as genuine as somebody who's like in the fight with you at the same time. Like,
exactly.
If I were to go take a songwriting class on YouTube, I think I wouldn't learn as much as if I just stood in a room with you two to be able to see how you did it, right? Like, people who are doing the work actually, can really give you the idea of how to, kind of take it out of yourself.
It's or like being in school again.
Yeah.
Yeah. You go to school and take classes and study a major and whatnot, but at least at this point, there aren't too many how to be an indie musician 101 courses. So this is my indie musician 101 course. It was cool.
I love that. Well, you've mentioned artwork a couple times. I do want to hit on that. Like, are you doing the artwork for your own?
Yeah.
And like, all right, well, as an artist in the visual sense as well as the musical sense, like, what's harder for you, to come up with the album art or come up with the songs?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think the songs take longer for me, mainly because I don't have enough time to spend the same amount on artwork as I do on music. So I'll often pick art styles that I feel are achievable in a few days' time. I think it would be really cool, and I've always wanted one day to work on some art projects that take a month or something like that, similar to a song, or a couple weeks at least. But at this point, it's mainly been a few days to do the art. And in the beginning, it was quite difficult. It did not come as naturally as the music, because I was very self-conscious of how it would be perceived and didn't know if it was professional enough. But I've always loved art. I've always loved drawing. I've always been doodling. I've always been messing around with paints and stuff. It was one of my favorite classes in elementary school and middle school. And even in college, I would always doodle. But I never thought really, okay, I'm going to connect this with my music, because I felt the music is this professional thing I'm working towards, and art is this little hobby I have on the side. But then I realized, wait, I could get better at my art if I try and hold myself to a similar standard that I do my music, and maybe the first couple won't be as good. This is the way to get where I want to be artistically. And I started 2 years ago when I was working on the Unschur mixtape. Got an iPad and I started drawing on it and I loved it. And interestingly, around that time, I felt that my brand, the ever elusive brand, started to come together. I had heard a bunch of people talking about it. Oh, you got to have a brand. Your music's got to have some identity. You got to sell not only the music, but yourself. I never knew what that meant. And then when I just naturally started putting my art on my music, all of a sudden my Spotify looked like this cohesive unit. And then because I was posting it all on Instagram, my Instagram had this aesthetic to it. And I never intended really for that to happen, but it did. And I felt really good about it because I didn't feel like I had to try to have that happen. And so then I did a whole year of the iPad art for the Unschur mixtape. Last year, I thought, okay, the iPad art has been really fun. Maybe I could paint. There are some artists that I follow on Instagram who I really love, and they inspired me to use a certain type of paint called gouache, which has like a matte finish, which I quite like. And so then I did a bunch of paintings for last year. And then I found another artist who restarted my love of abstract style, very similar to what I did for the single with Swum, No Season. So this year, I'm really going to focus on that. I have these old drawings in my childhood bedroom of abstract art I did when I was in middle school and high school. I love that stuff. And I had another thought, why did I ever stop doing this? So this is, again, me trying to get back into it and challenge myself and hold it to the same standards I do my music.
That's awesome. I mean, I think like that's a huge selling point for people when they hear a name, they go to your Spotify, and like the fact that you have something engaging for them to look at while they're listening. I think like it just brings everything together. I think that's really, really cool. And like, it's pretty unique that you do it yourself. I've, multiple people have told me like, hey, like, yeah, we have, my buddy or, so-and-so who's awesome. Shout out to them. But like, shout out to you for doing your own art.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Keeping it in-house, vertical integration.
Yeah, indeed. It's a little cheaper. But I also got to thank a lot of the artists that I found on Instagram. Also, my cousin is a professional painter, and he's one of the only people I know that's doing that, which is really cool. And he's given me some good advice. Nick Weber, great painter.
All right.
And I mean, really incredible. He lives out in Springs, way out on the tip of Long Island. Anyways, I got to thank a lot of those people because that's helped me feel comfortable doing it, seeing other people post their art all the time and not seeming to worry about it helped me a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I want to get in a little bit on your, live set. What is it like to go to a Schur show, or what is it, what do you want it to be like, right? Like, what are the things that, you want somebody to feel when they leave after they come see you live?
Question. I would say, I grew up listening to rock music from the 60s and 70s, and I heard Led Zeppelin when I was 8, and that's the reason that I started doing this whole thing. I fell in love with Jimmy Page. I thought I need to play guitar, and I want to play live music. And so the live band is essential. I'm not a fan of backing tracks personally. I have no issue with them. It's just not how I want to perform. And I want there to be the big live sound. I want a bunch of musicians on stage. I want it to be a little sporadic. I don't want every show to be the same. I want everything to be unique. I love the imperfections, the solos that take too long, the verse that ends up being a chorus, and then we go back to the verse for a second. I love when that stuff happens. And I think it gives a lot of life to my music. And it also is just what I grew up listening to. So it feels like a special experience to be able to try and replicate that live. So to that end, when I thought, okay, maybe I really should try and perform some of this stuff live, much encouraged by my older brother who plays bass in the band and who I grew up playing with, thought, well, it's got to be done live. I can't just have backing tracks, even though a lot of it is produced in my apartment here with drum samples. The rest of it's all synths, guitars, live everything. A big analog guy over here. And I got some friends together. I mean, all the people in my band are friends. One of them is my brother. I've known him my whole life. The keyboard player is one of my best friends from growing up. The sax player I played with all throughout college and a few bands, and we sang together in a cappella. And so he's been a close friend. And then our drummer, I met a few years ago through another music friend, and we've become buddies. So really now it's just a group of friends getting together to play music. And I love that. I think that the audience can truly tell when a band is a band, when there's synergy there, not when it's hired musicians. And so that's why I'm really keen on having this particular formation stick around.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been lucky so far, just in terms of availability and their willingness to work on a project at a stage when there's not much money in it. I think it's imperative, especially looking at Led Zeppelin and The Who, the Rolling Stones, groups whose lineup never changed in decades. And the audience senses that and becomes attached to that synergy. I think sort of the crux of that is the jam band, bands like Fish who are known for their live act. They're known for that synergy. People feed off of it. They'll go to 150 shows in a lifetime or in 5 years just to be a part of this.
Because they're all different.
Exactly. So I want people to come back to the last part of your question, to leave with a sense of, this was a unique live experience. Everything that you heard was done on stage, and I'm never going to be able to see that show again. But when I go see him next year, if he's in the same city, I'm going to have a completely different show, even if he plays the same songs. And that to me is really special. I think a modern example of that would be Ed Sheeran, who does everything live, just himself with a loop pedal. He's a savage. I feel like no matter what type of music you're into, you can look at that show and think, damn, that is cool. Just because it seems so raw and it all comes from him. And especially with my music, I think the rawness of it, the imperfections, the fact that it's recorded in an apartment and there's little noises and creaks in the background and there's a more live sound to it, means it needs to be replicated in a similar.
I love it. Well, I mean, where are we touring? When are we coming down south? What's going on?
Yeah.
What's in the car?
Yeah. So we're planning some shows for the spring. I'm at this interesting point in my career where I'm still booking shows myself. Thankfully, I got management, which has been hugely helpful. But we don't have an agent yet, and I don't quite have the level of popularity where I can start touring without losing heaps of money. So a lot of the shows kind of bootstrapping and putting together ourselves. To that end, we do a lot focus on the Northeast just because it's the most financially reasonable for us. So Boston, Philly, New York, we're headed up to Montreal soon. We're going to do a show in Chicago in May, which is the first time. That's the farthest we'll have gone, and I'm really psyched about that. Shows outside of the Northeast area are probably going to be either solo or duo shows.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons that I want to build up the solo and duo show, while not as bombastic perhaps as the live band, is just because, first of all, I think it brings a unique flavor of that rawness I was talking about, where it's very transparent on stage what's going on. I think that allows a unique connection with the musician and with the audience, but also because I have a good amount of followers in Europe, and it's not going to be realistic for me financially to tour there with a 5-piece band. At least not for the next year. I'm really hoping that things pop off, as I think every musician does. But just to bring it down to earth for a sec, I think it's going to be important for me to have a few different show varieties. So the full band, the solo, and then perhaps like a duo or a trio. But there are shows happening, and I'm in the works. Actually, this week, locking something down. So I can't quite talk about it yet because it's not certain. But with a little luck, there will be a lot of shows coming in the future. I'm excited.
Well, we will be waiting with bated breath. Follow them on Instagram. Follow them on Spotify. They let you know when the shows are happening in your area. So will be surely to come to your town soon.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
The wordplay, going to get it in there. It's interesting you bring up like that, kind of building the different kinds of shows. Probably the most famous person who's been on this show, other than Kate Nash, is a gentleman named Medium Build. And he, now you obviously are the most famous person who's been on the show. But Nick had, when we first saw him in Atlanta, he played with a drum machine, not even a drum machine. He played with a Spotify backing track and he had his guitar playing over it, but he just used like nature sounds with the backing track.
Awesome.
So he just sat there and just played that. And then, as he's obviously, grown up and, gotten to where he is now, like, it's been more and more people inside the band. Similar with Xenadelphia, somebody who I like when I first saw her, like, I was like, hey, like, it feels like your music's bigger than, in the Spotify world, it feels bigger than when I saw you live, solo. And she's like, well, that's by design. I needed to get, in front of more people. So touring with that solo kind of act to then come back. And I saw her this past November, and it was like backing track, 2-piece band, much bigger, huge sound. Like, and so I think it was more towards what her vision was, whenever I first talked to her. So it was cool to see. It's cool to see, the folks kind of go down that path. Looking forward to getting the duo trio show here in the South, and then the next year get the 5-piece band full experience.
Yeah, man, most definitely.
That'll be awesome.
It's a cool thing to have to do. Adapt your show as you go through varying levels of popularity, because it brings a lot of different stuff out of you, forces you to focus on different skills, and that's exciting. I'm pumped about it.
Getting creative. Test your metal on the kind of how you come up with how you want to get it around. Get the ideas across. So, well, I'm going to test your metal now with our Pete Peterson party pack of questions. It's 10 questions right in a row.
Let's go.
Quickly, rapid fire, this or that. Starting now, Andrew Schur of Schur. Cake or pie? Go.
Cake.
He's caking it. All right. Salad or soup?
Salad.
All right. Sunrise or sunset? What are you seeing more of?
Sunset.
Sunset. All right. Would you rather hit a home run or score a touchdown?
Ooh, touchdown.
All right. He wants a teeter. Let's go. Night in or night out? What are you having more of these days?
Night in. Music night in.
Music night in. When you do go out, though, and Lord knows, I know that New York gets down.
This is true.
When your jam comes on at the club, are you more likely to hit the robot or the worm? Probably
a worm. Yeah.
You're a worm guy? All right. Let's go. After you have a worm, you're fully hungry. It's 3 a.m. You're going out to your favorite Tex-Mex spot. What are you getting for the table? Guac or queso?
Oh, guac.
He's guacking around.
Although, I will say that is budget allowing. As we all know, the price of avocados is astronomical, especially in New York City. Budget allowing.
All right. Cheap guac, and send him your recs for cheap guac in New York City. Not ones that'll get you sick, though.
Yes. Good caveat right there.
All right, waffles or pancakes in the morning time?
That's a tough one, dude. Can I say both?
If you want.
I'm gonna have to say both.
Both? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We would usually alternate growing up, so they each share a very special spot.
Coffee or tea with your waffles or pancakes?
Only recently, has it switched to coffee. Never drank coffee until recently. So,
do you feel your life's changed? Just side note, feel your life's changed with coffee or without it?
A little bit, yeah. I would say I'm a pretty high energy person, and then I had a cup of coffee, and I thought I didn't think this sort of energy existed.
All right,
but I definitely gotta chill. I don't have it every day. I think I'd explode if I did. But it's a nice tool to have in your kit. I like being able to bring it out every now and then if I want to see a certain side of myself.
Love that. Dogs or cats? Catting it up. All right. Do you identify more as a ninja or a pirate? Gatorade or Powerade?
Gatorade.
All right. Toast or bagels?
I think, again, this is something that's switched. Probably recently, bagels. But whenever I go back to Connecticut, it becomes toast. Okay. Location dependent.
All right. Usually my New York-based people just go bagels immediately and give me a stupid look. So I appreciate the candor there.
Well, while I love it here, I'm not from here.
Yeah, that's a good point. Chips or pretzels?
Chips.
All right. Fries or tots? All right. After a long night, TV show or a movie to unwind?
I like a good movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm getting a movie. Are aliens real?
Absolutely.
All right. Bigfoot, real or not?
Might have been an alien. So maybe he popped down for a minute and then left, and now we're just left with mystery.
Respect that answer. I like that. Is love at first sight real?
Ooh, yeah. I think the amount of it is probably a little lower, but certainly can exist at first sight. But then it kind of grows.
Yeah, I got you. All right, and the final question of Pete Peterson's party pack of questions. Name 2 bands that we ought to check out that we might not know. Send us to where, what you've been listening to.
Okay. First one is a guy. His name is DLG. Just the initials. He's awesome. And I would say the second one. Okay, this is a French artist. My girlfriend's French, and she showed me him years ago, and I think he's pretty gnarly. His name is Christophe May, A-E. Really big in France, but hasn't had much of a shockwave over here.
I love it. We got DLG and Christophe May as the recommendations coming straight from Schur. So everybody needs to check them out. And our final question, of the podcast. What is your last searched thing on your Spotify, Apple Music? What was the last thing you searched on there?
Let's find out.
On your recent searches.
Last thing I searched was a German techno producer named Ski Mask. Skee space MASK. This video popped up on my YouTube of Ski Mask's studio setup. And I thought that they had misspelled like Ski Mask Slump God or something, but no. Turns out this guy is, German, from Munich, techno dude. So I'm going to check some of his stuff out. I put it in the Spotify to save the search. I don't know if you ever do that. You're like, I can't listen now, but let me type that in and get back to it.
I love that. Yeah. I love the recent searches. I'll do mine just because we're
please.
If I don't want to feel you. I don't want you to feel alone.
Thank you.
In this, but my last one is who John Gruden is.
No, who's that?
All right, so he's a football coach, but he has this like thing called he talks about football players that like did a really great job on Sundays. Okay, and the song is called "Nicey." It's by Hexed and Kimati. And it's like he makes this video where he's like, this guy, I tell you what, man, this guy's got, a great, he had a great weekend. His plays got me feeling nicey. And he just like, they play the song and then he just goes, ooh, at the end. But that is my last.
I got to listen to this song.
Yeah, you can get you some nicey in. You'll get it feeling. But
hilarious reference. I love that, Grant.
Well, Andrew, appreciate you coming on. Be on the lookout for his tour dates. Be on the lookout for new music coming from him.
A lot of new music.
Yeah. So go follow him on Spotify. Follow him on your Apple Music, whatever you consume music on. Follow him on Instagram. He's a great follow to check out. And appreciate you coming on the show. And look forward to seeing you guys come down here in Atlanta.
100%, Grant. Thank you so much for having me on. This was a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you, man.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.